scheme was actually a bit of a mess. In one instance, the consultants were paid over £1 million before a single brick was laid. I think Saddleworth does need a new school. I think new schools play an important role, but it's a luxury we have when the public finances are in control, and as a country you can afford it, and we don't have that money there. If I was your MP, I certainly would argue for our fair share of resources so we could have a new school, but in the present economic climate that's not going to be possible.
Best chair of the Royal Bank of Scotland to pay for it then.
And that's why we introduced a bank levy, which has already raised 3.5 billion. Labour opposed our bank levy proposal.
And offset by reduction in corporation tax.
Which when I get and it's an important point, but when we speak to small businesses, one of the biggest things they talk about is having a reduction in corporation tax.
Paul? Investing in teachers. Well, yeah, of course we need to invest in teachers, but let's be frank, there's something massively gone wrong with the education system in this country over the past 30 years. And we can fiddle while going burnt with academies and short staff and things like that, but let's be frank. Standards have gone down increasingly, and what you've done over the years is you've made exams easier to match this up. What we need to get back to, quite frankly, is academic selection, and the only way you do that is through grammar schools. Hang on. At the moment, what you've got is education by wealth. Because if you've got money, you can buy yourself out of a poor area into a nice area and get yourself into a better school. I went to the first school in Europe to actually have CCTV, a bog standard comprehensive school, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Okay? Coupled with that, there were more working class kids going to Oxbridge in the 1960s than there is now. Because grammar schools give working class kids the opportunity to better themselves, get themselves out of the community, get themselves into the top university. And what you're doing at the moment is you're failing working class children the width and breadth of Britain. That is the problem that we have, and the only way you solve it is going back to academic selection.
Yes, there was a school planned in Saddleworth. I understand it may not happen now. That's because of cuts in public spending that are being proposed and are being implemented. The Green Party is against cuts in public spending. There is no need for them. There is no case for them. There are other ways of reducing the deficit. We will have that discussion later on this afternoon. The democratic wish of the local community is that some of the money that's allocated to that local community for public services should be spent on building a new school. Then that should be an initiative that goes ahead. Of course, what we are seeing, and what we did see under the last Labour government, and there's no signs of it changing under this one, are incredibly expensive school building and hospital building, for that matter, programmes because of PFI. That is to say, if people are aware of the situation, under the last government and again under this government, the money is not given directly to public authorities and to local councils. They have to actually involve private sector companies who build the schools, rent them back to the council or to the local authority, to the public authority, and charge and make a profit for the pleasure of doing so. And they make ludicrously high profits, and they are not held properly accountable, and the costs always go through the ceiling, and the local council always pays, and private big business has had public sector organisations over a barrel for far too long. So yes, we need new public services and new public investment. It needs to be provided directly by publicly accountable local authorities, health authorities, etc., and it shouldn't involve PFI. In terms of the wider educational debate about standards and stuff, I don't know. I think you should actually talk to the people on the ground. The people on the ground. It was an historic moment, actually. I know something about teacher trade unionism, and they can be a militant bunch, but it was an historic moment during the course of the last general election campaign, or just before it, where, on the issue of tests and on the issue of SATs, and all of the big parties were obsessed about tests. Who's got the best tests? How many tests do we need? How young should you start testing children? How do you measure the tests, etc., etc., etc. The professionals, not just the teachers, not just the rank and file teachers in the National Union of Teachers and the other teaching unions, but also the headmasters union, all came together in a spirit of unity that I have never witnessed in the education profession and said, we don't need so many tests. Tests are part of the problem and not part of the solution. And I would echo.
Absolutely, in terms of the importance of inspirational teachers in terms of affecting our young people, that is probably the most important thing. I've worked in an academic setting as well, so I've had my fair share of teaching as well as research and working in the NHS. So it is absolutely key. Have good quality teaching is absolutely key to the future of our young people, inspiring them to want to go on to learn. It is about developing their potential and not just in terms of being able to make sure that they are skilled and able to take a job, but for the sake of it. It really can make an absolute difference to a young person's life. Having said that, in terms of the buildings and so on, we need to hark back to 1997, when I can remember many school facilities, when kids were working in leaky classrooms, where it really did affect the quality of their educational experience and ultimately in terms of their attainment. Where they were using photocopied textbooks and so on, and this, surely nobody can agree that was okay.
That's not the case at Saddleworth now, though.
Well, I'm glad that wasn't, but many places did have that experience. And I think in terms of the investment in education, the investment that we put into education for both increasing the number of teachers so that there were smaller class sizes, so that there were better pay in teaching, as well as educational facilities, it is absolutely important. This is the future for our country. We need to make sure that the opportunities for all young people, including the environment in which they're studying, there is evidence to show that the environment in which young people study is very important. And that we should be trying to make sure that this can be a very positive experience, and as I say, to make sure that young people can get the best out of the experience and the best from in terms of their potential.
Thanks, Owen. I actually took Sarah Tepper, the Minister for Children, up to the Saddleworth School to see the management there. We had a very productive meeting for the afternoon. And what was very clear is that when we took out the books for the Department of Education, there never ever was any money for Saddleworth School.
That's absolutely not the case.
Sorry, let me
That's
finish.
not the
You
case.
can come back, Debbie. Sorry, hang on, Debbie.
Two contractors that are already.
One at a time.
One at a time.
Sorry, if you want to give this in writing from the Minister responsible for children and looked into this matter, I'm happy to do so, Debbie. And I'll put it on my website for people to see. But when she looked into the matter, she found that there was never any money for Saddleworth School. Now, over the last couple of years, the Labour Party went on a trolley dash across the country with promises that they knew they couldn't keep. And when we got to the till, when we got to the till, there was nobody there for it. Now, you talked about not making promises you couldn't keep. That was one definitely the Labour Party didn't keep and couldn't make. Now, in terms of the specific things you've raised, Victor, I know you're against having a brand new school, you prefer the old buildings. The trouble is that you have is that Saddleworth School has been neglected from proper investment for the last 30 years. And it's always been the bottom of the queue in terms of Oldham Council, that when it was Labour controlled, always saw it as not one of their areas. Now, just to give you one example of where the issues we have, they've got a wiring problem at the moment that's going to cost them at least £1 million. They have to do it, you can't have school without proper wiring. And there comes a point when an old building costs a lot more to maintain than a new one does. So, yes, will I work and try and help them with their problems, but it's certainly not going to be easy, because the money's being spent, it's not there, you're given a false promise, and they're left with buildings that are simply inappropriate now at the moment. The only thing I would say in terms of Saddleworth School is that when Sarah Taylor came in and looked at the issue, she found it was one of the leading schools in the country in terms of inputs and outputs. It actually is a very efficient school in terms of what it does, and in particular in terms of its Mandarin classes. It's the only comprehensive school outside London that actually teaches Mandarin, and I think that's something we should be terribly proud of in Saddleworth.